Call a member for Swansea.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I campaigned as the Labor candidate for Swansea, I promised the people of Swansea that if I was elected, I would, as their representative in the New South Wales Parliament, I would vote against privatisation of the New South Wales electricity network. Well, on the 28th of March, I was elected to represent the electorate of Swansea with more than 64% of the vote. On that day, I was given a strong mandate to vote against privatisation of the New South Wales electricity network. For the benefit of the member for Epping, the definition of mandate, according to dictionary.com, is a command or authorisation to act in a particular way on a public issue given by the electorate to its representative. Well, member for Epping, like the member for Wyong and Gosford and the Entrance and Charlestown and Newcastle and Maitland and, of course, the member for Port Stephens, we have clearly been given that mandate. Now, I know that you don't like to hear that, but the truth is that the people in the Hunter and the people in the Central Coast reject this government's agenda in spades. I stand here with the thoughts of those people who voted for me, and today I will honour them by voting against the Liberal government's sell-off of our poles and wires. They told me that privatisation for our electricity network was bad news for electricity prices, bad news for electricity reliability, and bad news for regulation, and most certainly bad news for workers in that industry, and I support them. When I was growing up in Swansea, every second person's father was either a coal miner or worked in the power station. Generations of families have relied on the power industry to support their families with good, secure jobs, good incomes, and the knowledge that their kids could have the same opportunity in their hometown. It is obvious to me that this government is out of touch with the people in my electorate. The people of Swansea, though, they aren't silly. They know a dud deal when they're presented with one, and they know that this legislation is fundamentally sneaky to its core. There is no detail, no transparency, and definitely no protection for workers. Madam Speaker, we don't need to look too far to see what privatising our electricity network will mean for the people of New South Wales. Our friends in South Australia and Victoria have suffered a loss of recurrent income, customers paying higher prices, and thousands of jobs have been cut. When the Victorian Liberal government privatised the state's electricity assets, power prices went up. They didn't go down like you're suggesting they're going to and like you've promised. Reliability suffered following electricity privatisation, with blackouts increasing by 32%. Regional towns in Victoria suffered the most through massive job losses and the removal of apprentice and training opportunity. Job cuts were in the thousands, and we'll see it again right here in New South Wales. Experience shows that private owners have aggressively cut costs to recoup their investment in the shortest possible timeframe, reducing capital expenditure and maintenance programs, eliminating apprentice opportunities, closing depots, and contracting out core work to our electricity workers. Based on the Victorian model, it is predicted the number of electricity workers employed by New South Wales network businesses could be cut by more than 50% over the coming years if this privatisation plan is rammed through this parliament. Madam Speaker, I have grave concerns about what electricity privatisation means for jobs in Swansea. I fear what will happen to the many thousands of regional and rural workers in New South Wales if we were to go down this path. Madam Speaker, the Premier promised that the jobs of permanent award employees will be protected. This legislation does not deliver on that promise. Instead, employees are compulsorily transferred and their futures are most uncertain. In Swansea, there are a lot of tradespeople. They know that to get a good job in the industry that they choose, that they need to get an apprenticeship. An electrical trade apprenticeship can lead to some of the best trade jobs in the electorate. But what does this legislation mean for electrical trade apprenticeships in New South Wales? The evidence shows that privatisation of electricity assets results in a reduction in apprentice training and will give rise to skills shortages across New South Wales. Madam Speaker, it is a fact that publicly owned firms have a much higher level of annual apprentice intake compared to privately owned electricity distributors. In fact, the private electricity distributor sector, bonuses and remuneration incentives of senior managers are often linked to achieving cost-cutting benchmarks, which is achieved by reducing training and reliance upon sourcing skilled labour from an external labour market. This is terrible news for Swansea and your electorate too. Losing workers and apprentices will have a severe flow-on effect for electricity consumers. Our network will become less reliable, far more unsafe.
The member will be heard in silence.
Emergency response times will slip and customer service standards will bottom out. Under this legislation, we will lose many of our existing local-based skilled workers and we will cut off the opportunities for so many of our young people to get a great local job. Madam Speaker, Mike Baird is privatising the poles and wires and seeking to impose higher electricity prices on families and small businesses across New South Wales, including Swansea. So, like many of my colleagues have already mentioned, I am very concerned about the damage increases in electricity bills will have on my community and everyone in this House's community, actually. Since the Liberals came to office, the average household electricity bill has gone up by $629 per year.
Tax.
That is over.
The member for he's already been sin bin once today, and he's heading for another sin bin. The member for Swansea will be heard in silence.
And they removed the regulated maximum price on power prices. The simple fact is that pensioners, families, business owners and individuals will be left paying more for electricity under this privatisation plan. I have recently met with a number of NGOs in my electorate, the type of organisations that work hard to ensure that people who are doing it tough don't go without putting food on the table for their kids. And do you know what they're telling me? It's not a laughing matter at all. They have never experienced the level of need for emergency relief to assist with household bills than what they have received since the bad Liberal National Government came to power. When people are charged more for basic essential services, such as the provision of electricity, it has a significantly negative impact on low-income earners. The reality is that more low-income earners in my electorate are staring down the barrel of having their electricity cut off as a result of price increases. Rising electricity prices has already led to massive increases in the number of residential disconnections in New South Wales. In fact, the number of residential electricity disconnections has risen by 64% between 2010 and 2014 alone. Can you imagine how much this figure will increase if we go ahead with privatisation? All Mike Baird's focus has been on is the funds raised from privatisation and the fancy infrastructure projects that they will pay for. Little to no attention has been given to investing in social services and social infrastructure in this state. In my community, I'm reminded daily of the issues real people live with: mental health, domestic violence, homelessness, poverty, and the list goes on. Yesterday, Mike Baird told us that this sale is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Well, Madam Speaker, if that is true, then this government is letting the most disadvantaged people in our communities down. Madam Speaker, this legislation fails the fairness test. During the past 15 years, the publicly owned electricity network has contributed more than $15.5 billion to New South Wales Treasury. On average, that's more than $1 billion a year. Each year, New South Wales receives dividends from the electricity companies to fund our infrastructure needs, employ our nurses, our teachers and our AMBOs. And we can do this because our state owns the electricity network. If we sell our poles and wires, this money will go to the new owners as profit, not to our hospitals, schools and emergency services, and that is bad news for the people of New South Wales, and that is why I oppose this bill.